This is the Paramilitary Training Camps Forum, and I'd like to now introduce Brandon Webb, who's representing Wind Zero project in the Ocotillo and No Mirage area. Please help me welcome Brandon Webb.
All right, thanks, Ray. So, Ray, I appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to thank you for letting us come out here and really introduce again to members of the community who Wind Zero is and what we stand for. What I'd like to do is give a brief personal introduction and then go into an introduction on the company as well. Then I'll walk you through our facility plan, talk about some of the benefits of the facility like Wind Zero, and then I also have with me here today Phil Taylor, is our entitlement developer, and he'll be available to answer any of the technical questions that you may have as well. So just a quick personal background. I am a Navy SEAL, but my background is much different than Eric Prince. I was originally born in Canada. I grew up most of my life in Ventura, California, on a 50-foot ketch right in Ventura Harbor. 13 years in the Navy. My first 3.5 years were spent as a search and rescue swimmer. Then I went to the SEAL teams where I spent about a little over 10 years as a Navy SEAL myself. The last 4 years in the SEAL teams I spent in a training role, and it was in that role that I really learned the huge need for training facilities for California agencies, not just the military. In training, very hard for us as a SEAL team training cadre to schedule facilities and ranges. And when I talked to local California law enforcement agencies, they were all having the same problems we were. A big lack of not only ranges, but also right now in San Diego, there's no place for local law enforcement to drive on a track. So the tracks are a huge need as well. So one thing or two things came to my mind. One was I was starting a young family. My wife and I, more her than me, she decided it was either her or the Navy. So I got out. We're starting a young family. We have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. So I decided to get out of the Navy and take advantage of the opportunity to provide a facility like this for the members of the military and the local California, specifically San Diego, law enforcement agencies. Because what I realized was not only were we traveling out of state and out of area, this is impacting the law enforcement training as well. So they're being forced to train out of state and out of the area, and that's at great cost. You know, we all pay taxes. That's taxpayer dollars spent on, you know, sending people to Texas to do driving at ITI, or in most cases even as far out as North Carolina. So it's at great cost financially. Plus, it was having a lot of the military law enforcement agencies. It's a retention problem because they can't. What you have is a situation where people are gone so much training, and then they ship overseas, and there's just no time to spend with the family. So really, to be able to provide a facility in San Diego that supports law enforcement and the military locally, provide a place for these agencies to go out and train and be home for dinner with their families, not all the way across the country on the East Coast. So I'm hoping that next time we come out here, we can move Wind Zero under the paramilitary heading and on the other side of the training facilities, because we are definitely not a paramilitary organization. If there's one thing that really differentiates us from a company, from other paramilitary organizations, that by design, our business model is around support. So we are providing a place for local agencies to come train themselves in most cases. And we're a public. We're open to the public as well. So a public facility. We'll have our courses offered for the public for the driving track as well as the firearm safety courses. So that's a big differentiator that I see between Win Zero. We're open to the public, and we're there to support law enforcement and military, not replace. You know, we have no interest in getting into the mercenary paramilitary game whatsoever. Jeff, would you mind holding the facility up and over? So we've got two charts up here. The one on the easel just is an artist's rendition of our entrance, which has our main lodge, and Jeff will hold up our facility plan, and this will be available after we're done as well for you to come up and go through as well. So just to orientate you, Ocotillo, as you drive out 8 east, the 8 drops into the desert, and just outside of Ocotillo is our facility. This is the Interstate 8 right here. And main entrance right off the 98. We've got this set of ranges down here. What's really scarce as well in California right now is even on military installations, the 1,000-yard range for precision shooting is a real scarcity. So every agency that we talk to, right down, we've got San Diego Sheriff's Department, San Diego, even the Postal Inspector Service, San Diego PD, the Department of Homeland Security. The list just goes on and on. Every agency we talk to, which was just very open with their plans on their existing facilities that weren't enough, they said, we'll give you anything. Because a facility like this, they recognize the benefit right away, and they're very excited to have a place to come train. The road continues up here in our clubhouse, which is rendered on the drawing there. The clubhouse we have, it would be open to the public. We have a pro shop, air-conditioned classrooms. We also have a dining facility. We will have lodging as well, but it will be open to everybody. So we have lodging we're going to have 60 rooms, so double occupancy up to 120. We'll have a recreational vehicle park, 150 space park that will be open to not only to anyone coming to use the facility, but also there's a lot of people coming out to the desert right now to do a lot of the off-road driving, so it would be open to the general public. This driving track, we've got 2 tracks. We've got a law enforcement track, and then we have a highway road track. FBI, DEA, to name a few, very interested in having a track. Like I mentioned earlier, there are no tracks in San Diego. Most of the law enforcement agencies, they get their practice when they're driving through local San Diego neighborhoods at high pursuit, because they just don't get, most of these agencies, they can't meet their minimum training requirements, so their practice is when it's actually happening for real. Also the San Diego Porsche Club and local driving clubs in San Diego expressed interest in the track as well. Right now they cone out Qualcomm parking lot, and they do a lot of driving out there. So just to give you an idea of some of the agencies that would be using the facility. And as well, I keep mentioning the public. If you wanted to come out there, we're going to have driving courses open to the public. So a defensive driving class that you or one of your family members could take. This set of ranges up here will be designated our public ranges. The range up top is shotgun sports. First range that'll go in there will be 5-stand sporting play. We've got the public rifle and the public pistol range as well. The rest of the ranges we'd be contracting out to NRA clubs, and as well as let's say the San Diego Sheriff or the Imperial County Sheriff or Border Patrol would want to come out and use those ranges and train themselves. We would contract those ranges out. All right, thanks, Joe.
And one thing to note is we haven't submitted our specific plan yet, and our concept plan has already significantly changed based on the input from the community, and it might change again. So conceptually, this is what you'll see. You just might see something a little different when we do the specific plan.
Yeah, and Jeff brings up a good point, is that we changed our plan right away. The first meeting we had with the community, there were some concerns with the location of some of the ranges that were adjacent to Molitor Road that runs along the border of our property. And we're very committed to working with the community, taking community input, even so far as I sent a letter to Chairman Zeckman, Joe Zeckman of the Sierra Club, and invited the Sierra Club to sit down with us and give their input on the facility, which leads me into my next topic is the most anticipated alternative development on this type of property. Just the fact that it's adjacent to the 8, it's located within an hour's drive of San Diego, and we had 2 developers in backup position when we had the property under escrow. So from an environmental perspective, our facility is a great alternative to housing, is what I'm getting at. With the existing zoning, you can build, I think, Phil, how many?
24, 40 acre old parcels.
So 24, with the existing zoning, you can build 24. And realistically, any developer that gets in there is going to want to build out a lot more than that. So just from those 24 houses, our facility uses much less water. We are powering the facility 100% renewable energy. It'll all be solar powered. And we're designating, I think, over 100 acres as an environmental easement as well. So
About 300-400 acres.
yeah, so 300-400 acres of our facility is designated as an environmental easement.
Do you own the land already?
We have the land in escrow right now.
It's in escrow.
Yeah. So, no.
Is it contingent on getting your permitting, or is it just?
If you don't mind, I'll just finish up and then I'll open it up for questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions. So, and in summary, I just can't express enough that as a company, we're designed to support, not replace. We're not a paramilitary organization. We actually would support legislation that stops any type of paramilitary activity in California, and we're committed to the community and having it in our language, in our specific plan amendment, to allow only certain things to happen on this facility. So Ray brought up a really valid concern at our first meeting with the community, and Ray said, well, what's to stop Blackwater from buying you in 10 years? So it's a valid concern, and we're committed to having the language in our specific plan that says, hey, you can only train, it's open to the public, this type of training will happen, period. So it wouldn't matter if it changed hands or not, but you would only be allowed to do those certain things on a facility. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. And I'll take.
Well, I was
Yes,
just
ma'am.
asking about you're buying it, is it contingent on getting all of the permits?
What?
That's actually negotiations.
Yeah, we're actually negotiating to have the owner carry the property through the entitlement process for the duration. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, now what is the size? Maybe I missed that. How big is that? Acres?
The property is 963 acres.
Hold on a
total.
second.
And have you done a study with the neighborhood? Is it compatible with whoever is around there? The neighbors? What are they, ranchers or farmers? Or?
It's a mix of residents, and a lot of people own property out there that they store they'll have a storage shed and they'll put their motorcycles in there and drive out on the weekends. So yes, we are working with the community, and some of the community leaders that we talk to. A project like this actually supports their long-term strategic goal of being able to incorporate, because a project that, from the alternative housing development is very, very better, much better for the environment, and provides a substantial tax base that would let them go to the county and say, look, we've got a pretty large tax base and we'd like to incorporate. Because right now there's a problem, they don't have fire service and medical is a problem in Ocotillo. That's been.
Just to orient you a little more to the land, this is all Bureau of Land Management land, and it's already set aside for off-road driving. So, and the idea is people will like have a garage or a trailer here, and they'll park an ATV or something, and then they'll drive the property, and then a lot of hunting happens as well in this area. So a lot of these folks are sportsmen.
What do they hunt?
Quail.
Yes, sir.
Where are you headquartered?
Pardon?
Where's your headquarters?
Right now we have an office in Mission Valley. Right up Mission Valley.
Do you have a facility anywhere else?
No, sir.
You anticipate one anywhere else?
Possibly, yeah.
Another state?
Yeah. It's too far out to really say where, but
We don't have the resources to do anything to concentrate on this facility.
Okay, I appreciate that.
and it brings up a good point is we are, in contrast, we're a small California service disabled veteran-owned company. You're staring at one of 2 paid employees, so
You don't have anybody over in Iraq,
no, sir.
nor do you anticipate that phase of it?
No, we're not getting in. We don't anticipate getting into the private security contracts.
Okay, I got one more question.
Hey, Brandon, we're fully committed to not doing private paramilitary overseas.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Since you're averse to the business of paramilitary, could you give me your definition? Because I don't think a lot of people understand. What is a paramilitary?
So it's funny you ask.
Do they have structure? Do they, what is it?
So a paramilitary organization, if you look up in Wikipedia, it's, I've got the exact definition actually. So it designates forces whose function, like private forces whose function near existing military organizations. So we are definitely not set up to as a private military company. If that answers your question. Unless you have a different definition.
I was looking for a more in-depth definition, but
That's right off of the Wikipedia. Yes, sir.
I believe we talked before down there about the aquifer dropping, and as far as the amount of people you're bringing in, you're already talking about bringing in over twice the population that lives there with a dropping water table now. And then sewage you're going to have, it's going to be treated and dumped into it.
And that's a very good point that you bring up. And when we talk to the county, and we've done the study from housing, which is permitted. I think we're coming in at just under 30 acre-feet a year, Phil?
Right.
For water. And what was the exact
You're
amount?
allowed 30, with the existing zoning, you can have 36 acre-feet. The 30 acre-feet will have to be treated, which means that if you go back.
So most of the water that we actually use would be going back into the aquifer.
But to say that there could be 1,700 homes or whatever down there ain't gonna happen because they don't have that kind of water anyway.
No, I agree with you, buddy. We said the existing home, with the existing zone, we come in we use less water, and most of the water goes right back into the aquifer, and it would be regulated. As you're familiar with there's another company out there.
You're still gonna be shooting 50 caliber.
Pardon?
You're still gonna be shooting 50 caliber, right?
Actually, we looked at, that was a concern, and we're looking at not having that in our plan at all. So limiting it up to probably a 300 Win Mag and not the 50 cal. Because when we have consultants that were consulted with around noise abatement, and the 50 cal was not coming in as low with the noise abatement material. So we're looking at getting rid of that completely. Yes, sir.
Brandon, how much do you think it costs to put in your facility, irregardless of the land cost? I mean, what would it cost to build this facility you're talking about?
So in its
Find the map.
It's an entirety,
Yeah.
which it'll be built in stages, just because we are, like Jeff said, we're limited in resources, but it's $17 million to build out everything in its entirety. And we anticipate making some concessions through planning as well.
Does that include the land or regardless of the?
That's just the construction, so irregardless. Yes, ma'am?
So where are you being funded from this? Where's the money coming from?
Most of our funding comes from through our own personal capital and friends and family investors.
And
When
a
you
small
say-
business association backed capital loan.
Yeah, Torrey Pines Bank just gave us it's a loan called the Patriot Express. It's designed for veterans who own small business.
So you don't have any private corporations that are funding you?
No.
We're looking for investors, yes.
Would you, I'm sorry, but would you accept funding from private military contractors?
No.
You have a name for a CEO?
I am the CEO.
You are the CEO?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brandon, 2 questions. First of all, what's on the land now? I mean, what does it look like?
So Ray took video of the last meeting out there.
I could show that if you want to.
Yeah, maybe after we're
Yeah.
done, Ray, we could show that. The past owner who passed away had gone out there and graded most of the level part of the property. So he took his tractor out there, graded it, and right now it is actually one of the reasons the county was encouraging us with our plan is that it creates this air quality hazard. When the wind picks up out there, it creates a dust bowl effect, and if you drive out to the desert on the 8th and you've gone out there when the wind blows, literally the dust bowl is right across the 8th, and you have to slow down to about 30 miles an hour. So it's a safety hazard, air quality hazard. I've actually got the pits in my windshield in my Toyota truck outside to cruise it. So it's really, in a true state, it's a blighted piece of land. Jeff and I went out there. Every time we've been out there, there's already people going out to our property and shooting. We find targets and spent shell casings every time we go out and view the property.
Second question I have, lead abatement. I mean, you're talking about putting some lead down range here, right? So how are you going to deal with it?
So, and that's a good question. We're actually going to be, our plan is to be 95% lead-free range. It's the way California is going anyway. So when I say lead-free, there's plenty of composite ammunition out there that is not lead and it won't contaminate there's no risk of contaminating the ground. So what we do anyway, there'll be several ranges that will be designated, specifically the rifle range as a lead range, and you put material under the impact area that enables you to go in every 2 years and mine the lead, which is actually a recyclable material. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the Porsche Club showed an interest in the site, felt that way with their toys.
Yes, sir.
You have a contact there? I'm in the Porsche Club. I'm one of the officials in the Porsche Club.
Yeah, Jeff.
If Brad Ramber, you and Brad, or Keith Burlack. I just spoke with Brad Ramber is my business partner. I'm not affiliated with Zero, and he's in the Porsche Club. We just went out there a couple months ago to have.
I know Keith.
Yeah, and I spoke to Keith, and Keith basically said, a well-designed track would be useful to us because you're so limited at Qualcomm. And the pilings, it just makes it hard if you have a spin out, if you design it.
We just go through the race, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. So anyway, so I can, if you ask Keith and say it's Brad Ramber's business partner, spoke to Jeff Evers on the phone, and I feel certain I remember that conversation. I'll give you my.
Yes, sir.
The blighted land you're talking about, with nobody grading on it anymore, is going to recede and come back just like the rest of the desert does.
Yeah, and it's also it's going to be a development as well. I mean, it's a facticity that piece of land is just one of the last contiguous pieces of acreage. It's just located right adjacent to the 8, close to San Diego.
Well, it might be, but it depends what it's going to be developed.
Yeah. And we think that we're a great alternative to any future housing.
I mean, you couldn't possibly contract to Blackwell for anything, even target shooting or anything, right?
Any company would become a customer of Wind Zero if they're training law enforcement. Just, law enforcement. We're not training mercenaries.
Yeah.
That's our commitment.
Would you be training Marines and Navy and Coast Guard type people?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of these agencies provide their own training cadre. So we would contract out the space for them and the ranges, the tracks for them to come train themselves. And there would be cases where they want to take one of our courses as well. But they provide usually those groups provide their own training.
Maybe I don't understand the scope of the project, but 17 million to build a facility on roughly 1,000 acres. 17 million would be really small change to the Department of Defense to build their own facility at Camp Pendleton or any number of military bases that exist at this time.
There's just
why isn't that being utilized?
That's a question I can't really answer. I just know that my own personal experience and all the local San Diego law enforcement agencies that I contacted, there is no available space. It's a limited resource. So I mean that would be a question, for maybe congressional at the congressional level.
Because it seems like they could handle all this stuff themselves just by writing one check and opening up a base.
And it would be and when you make a good point, but that now they've got to go find land to do that. And right now that's a high demand. So yeah, the federal government could easily go take a piece of land and get an environmental waiver and do anything they want. So what we're saying is we're going in and we're under the environmental restrictions and we're going to follow the rules. So yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm trying to visualize this training track that you're describing, and what kind of vehicles would be trained on there, and how big, and when they fire, how far does the range go, and what's the largest size?
So no firing on the driving track, and the tracks would be for regular, like a police cruiser or a regular automobile.
No bigger than that?
No.
Nothing.
Ray, are we all right on time?
Yeah, can I ask a question? Yeah, Raymond Lutz, Citizens Oversight. Let's say that we are able to stop Blackwater from going in over there in Potrero, and let's say your facility is successful in being approved. Would you then be willing to contract out your facility to Blackwater mercenaries who would be coming in to get trained so that they could work under the Blackwater banner over in Iraq or other places of the world?
Absolutely not. It's like Jeff stated earlier. That's one thing we're committed to not letting that happen. It was a big concern in the community, and it's a commitment that we made, and it will be reflected in the language in our specific plan amendment.
Actually, we should probably. Why don't we reserve other questions to the question and answer period, which we'll have at the very end.
And I'll stay after as well to answer your question.
Okay,
But
good.
you would be a direct competitor then with Blackwater for contracts?
For the training for the law.
For military and law enforcement training.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Okay. Let's give Raymond a hand. And thanks everybody for your good questions. I'd like to now introduce our next speaker. His name's Mark Halcon. He is the owner of American Shooting Center. I hope I get all this information right. And also had been operating a facility called Covert Canyon, which is just past Alpine, just past the reservoir. Yeah, I'll let him describe it. But I have visited it, and I have a video on our site that gives you a tour. But anyway, let's let him describe what his proposal is. Please help me welcome Mark Halcon.
Ray. Thank you for a couple of things. Thank you for having this forum, but thank you for raising community awareness in some of the areas, some of the concerns a lot of people have about paramilitary training and so-called mercenary training and that kind of thing. I've listened to both these presentations, and there's a lot of, I'm anticipating questions because I assume you're going to ask me some of the same questions you've asked these other people. But as a background, let me just basically say that there's a big difference between what I do, my company does, and who I am, okay? I was born in Coronado, here, San Diego boy, grew up in Point Loma in the San Carlos area, went to college here. I'm a competitive shooter. I started shooting competitively when I was about 8 years old, come from a big background of law enforcement people. I opened American Shooting Center 10 years ago. It's on Ruffin Road. It's a retail store, an indoor shooting facility, in a classroom, and we primarily teach civilians, the general public. And as I look in here, I see about 6 faces that have been through my courses. So kind of keep that in mind when we're asking questions later. Prior to 10 years ago in opening that, as a competitive shooter, I was on the board of directors of an organization called the United States Practical Shooting Association. And we traveled all over the world doing competitive shooting. And that competitive shooting was open to civilians, it was law enforcement, military. And as a struggling building contractor here in town back at that period of time, in order to pay my way to go to Australia or Canada or South America to compete in these world matches, myself and a couple other shooters would go to Australia, for example, would go to the police departments and say, hey, we're here for 2 weeks shooting, you guys want to get some training? And primarily, because civilians and the private industry can generally do it better than when the government gets involved in a certain type of training. When I shoot 60,000 rounds a year as a competitive shooter, that's a lot more than the military instructor would shoot probably in his lifetime as an instructor. So we ended up a little bit more talented, would you say. And that's one of the reasons, I heard a question earlier, that's one of the reasons that the government subcontracts out some of this work. They subcontracted out for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons was budget cuts. A lot of the bases are being closed throughout the country, especially here in California. During the Clinton administration, there was a lot of cutbacks in military spending and that kind of thing. A lot of the bases got closed in California, a lot of environmental issues. So what happened with us is, after I opened American Shooting Center, I would get a call from the local police department, and they would say, hey, Mark, it's raining, we can't use our range, it's full of mud, we'll use your facility at night. I'd say, sure. I'd open up at night, I'd go in and I'd take a look at them, and I'd say, yeah, these guys are really bad shots. And I'd grab their instructors, and I'd say, how about, let me do a class for you. And it kind of snowballed. We started doing Border Patrol, federal law enforcement agencies, some military agencies, at our facility on Ruffin Road. And I've been doing that for 10 years. After 9/11, things changed. We have a volunteer military force out there. A lot of people got recalled. I'm not going to turn this into a military discussion. We're talking about land use and about what I do for a living. The military came to us and said, can you do some training for us? They took me up to Camp Pendleton. I did some long-range rifle. That's kind of what I like doing. I did some training at Camp Pendleton. Got a contract to go back to Fort Bragg to the Army Ranger School, and not only train in some of the defensive driving we're talking about, but also long-range rifle, what they call house clearing, going through searches, that kind of thing. Why? Because some civilian departments, civilian units can do it more efficiently, okay, and more cost-effective. All right. As you know, land is at a premium here, especially in Southern California. I was a contractor and developer for many years, so I know that. When the military came to us and said, we like using your indoor range, and we don't mind flying you across the country to do this kind of training, not just me, but my staff. Boy, if you had an outdoor place, this might be something we could look at. And I said, okay. So I started searching, and I searched the East County. I went as far as Imperial Valley, looked at Yuma. I've been to most shooting schools throughout the United States and all over the world in my 30 years as a firearms instructor. And I found a piece of land just outside of Alpine. It's 160 acres. I own it. I fund it. My house is there. I live there. If you think that I'm going to do anything to hurt my environment, in which I live with my dogs and everything else, that's just not going to happen. Let me address one issue real quick, because this will probably be brought up. What's my affiliation with Blackwater? Well, after 9/11, we were asked to bid on government contracts, and there was a contract that was let in the San Diego area for the Navy, and we bid on it. The Navy, which awarded these out of Orlando, Florida, as well as Virginia, called us up and said, you know, you've got a great facility, you've got great instructors, but you don't have what they call past performance. You don't have enough past experience, so we're going to give it to another contractor. And I said, okay, go ahead. They said, we're going to give it to Blackwater. I said, good luck. Well, the reason I said good luck is because in the state of California, to be in this business, to have these type of firearms, you need a plethora of different licenses and permits. I should point out that I'm also the president of the California Association of Firearm Retailers. I represent a lot of the retail gun dealers up and down the coast. We do have a lobbyist to look at over-regulation of some of the things that we do. We try to comply with federal law, state law. And since we had all these permits, Blackwater came to us and said, we cannot operate in California without you. And I said, yes. Again, now, you should know that I am a businessman. You know, we can talk all day about patriotism and everything else. And I like to tell people I'm a reward capitalist. But I also do have very strong beliefs in what's right and what's wrong. And so when they came to us and they said, can we subcontract to you? I said, absolutely. So, American Shooting Center, my corporation that I own, that's not publicly funded, we took a subcontract from Blackwater USA out of North Carolina. Strictly a subcontract. We are not owned by them. That's the only affiliation. It was a 5-year contract. It ends next month, I believe. It officially ends next month. I am a competitor of Blackwater. I'll be a competitor with whoever bids these things across the country. I bid some of this work throughout the country, and not just in California. And so now we have a lot of past performance, and we do a lot of other things. We have subcontracts with I guess we call Department of Defense contractors, who will come to us and say, gosh, we need to train, 8 people, in the small arms, a handgun, for example, because they're going to go into harm's way. And this is not civilians. This is not, we're not open to the public at our facility up in Alpine. American Shooting Center is open to the public. It's a public store. It's a retail store. You've probably heard some of my commercials, and we're on TV a lot. You'll see me on TV a lot because I'm also a forensic analyst. And I do a lot of work for the Public Defender's Office. I specialize in homicide cases, in looking at firearms and how they work, and they work properly, that kind of thing. And I'm considered by the federal government as an expert in the use of lethal force. That doesn't make me a bad guy. It's just something that I do. It's a forensic thing. We got dragged into this situation, and I call it drag, as you know, with some of the articles that came out in the San Diego Union as well that came out on Channel 8. And I want to address those issues. I want to show you what we do, where we do it, and how we do it. Can we bring up? Right. Yeah. We can bring up. We've got a real brief slide presentation. I was invited to address this group a few months ago too, and it just didn't work out. I want to apologize for that. I wasn't skipping out of town. I just had another commitment. I've talked with Ray. Some of the articles that have been written about me and written about my company, it is press, it's media. And you look at it, you kind of go, oh, okay, fine. And then I started looking at the blogs, and two of the blogs I want to address right now is that I'm a white supremacist. That was one of the blogs that we train a lot of people out there. Well, I am not a white supremacist. Okay, I'm careful with it. The other one is that up in our facility, we have a lot of explosives going on up there. One of the blogs said that it shakes the neighborhood windows. When you see our facility, you realize that I am my neighborhood. I am located, surrounded by national forest. I have one neighbor, and then that person's surrounded by national forest. I'm 2 miles off of Honolulu Road, 2 miles on a dirt road. My gate to get to my property is at National Forest land, Cleveland National Forest. I own the easement that goes 1 mile through the National Forest that goes to the gate onto my property. So as far as the impact on my neighbors, we'll address the one neighbor issue if you want to address that. As far as the sound issues go, I'm at 3,200 feet elevation. I'm on the top of a mountain in a valley. The sound goes up. A mile and a half away from me is another street, another little neighborhood, if you will. Excuse me, right here. Another little neighborhood, and I had the pleasure of meeting one of my neighbors recently. I had a fence put in, and the contractor said, well, what's your address? And I gave it to him, and he said, you're my neighbor. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I live right below you, about, a couple thousand feet down this cliff on the other side. What do you do up there? And I said, oh, God, here it comes. I live up there. I started with that. He said, aren't you the guy who does the training? And I said, yes. He said, we never hear any shooting. What's going on? Well, from a sound point of view, even 50 caliber, if you park at my gate, you're not going to hear any shooting. Again, I'm on top of a mountain, in a canyon. I call it Covert Canyon. And I invited Ray. I read something Ray wrote about me, and I thought, I'm going to meet this guy because he knows a lot more about me than I do. And I invited him out there, and he filmed it, he videoed it, put it on his website, and I think he can attest that we're very secluded. You cannot drive down the freeway, down Hoppital Road, and see it. And I will tell you right now, if anybody, and I'll offer this to you right now, if Ray will organize it, I will host all of you up there to come and look at it. I'll cater it. You can see what I'm looking at to see what the environmental impact may or may not be going on up there. But that's one issue that I'm very, very aware of. American Shooting Centers on Ruffin Road, like I said, has been there for 10 years. We've been doing civilian firearms training, law enforcement, military. When I say civilian, I do not mean civilian that are being deployed overseas. I mean people who have concerns, who want to have a firearm at home for personal defense, who want to be a recreational shooter. We get a lot of recommendations from the courts for women and men who are being stalked or in an abusive relationship and maybe they've been injured and they want to have some confidence and some safety. That's kind of what we specialize in. The military security training, the schoolhouse has been going since 2002. This is basically a little line item of what we do for the military. When it says overseas and locally, what we're talking about is we get 24 people off of every ship that comes to the port. It's their security force people. And we teach them how to use a handgun, rifle, and shotgun. We teach them how to handcuff. We teach them how to search vehicles, how to search personnel. The vehicle inspection we talked about, that's done in our parking lot behind our building. Less lethal options, we talk about pepper spray, a little bit of hand-to-hand, but nothing ninja warrior type stuff. And some classroom labs and range scenarios. We've been doing this for 5 years. I don't know how many thousands of Navy personnel we've trained over there, but they come through on a regular basis. They come off the base at 32nd Street. They're delivered in a charter bus that shows up to my store at 6 in the morning. They are unloaded. We feed them breakfast as part of the contract. We train them, we feed them lunch, and we tuck them in back on the bus and send them home at night. So it's kind of what they call a turnkey operation. The Navy comes to us, or the Marine Corps says, we want them to learn this from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and we do what's called turnkey. Feed them everything, okay? The next one.
Excuse me? There was a line up there that you didn't address. I wanted to ask.
Okay, let's back up one, Rick, please. Which one?
Protection of bases and personnel.
Protection of bases and personnel. What we do with some of these, with all of these students, is we teach them how to stand guard at the gate of a military base or installation, or at a dock, wherever a ship is stationed, whether it's overseas or here, and show them how to determine and search people who are coming in. We're not protecting those bases, myself and my employees. It's the military people that are trained to do that. It's part of their curriculum. Okay, then. There you see Alpine in relationship to Interstate 8. And those of you who know the backcountry, I lived in Alpine, by the way, when I was going to college here, right off the South Bay, a little tiny cabin. So I really like the area and the community there. You take Tavern Road, you get some Hoppital Valley Road headed east, and you'll see Highland, which is a dirt road. And you go down that dirt road for 1 mile, you'll come to a lock gate that says private road, which is mine. And you go to that gate for another mile up the mountain, and that's where I'm situated. Again, you cannot see us, hear us, anything from any place. All right? This is a aerial photograph. I'm going to step kind of in front of it for a minute here just to give you a better idea. The, let's see, yeah, I knew this was good for something. this is my, where is it? This is my house right here. Okay, this is where I live. This is the road that comes in, my dirt road driveway. This is an airplane hangar that was built back in the 70s. Now, it's important that you remember that, because if you read the newspaper, it was said I was landing aircraft out there illegally. This long, not this strip here, but see where it ends and it goes that long thing there? That's a airstrip, a landing strip that was approved by the FAA in 1974. The previous owner was a pilot for the Sheriff's Department. The previous owner to him was a stunt pilot. So if you talk to people in Alpine and you say, oh yeah, the landing strip, a lot of the old timers go, oh yeah, that's right. I was not, in my opinion, we were approved by the FAA to use that landing strip, and what we've done is we've shut it down. You can't really see it right now, but we put 2 white X's on it, which means it's no longer open to the general public. What we did approve is to have military helicopters come in and land. And the reason they wanted to do this was what they call a mishap plan. If somebody got injured, could they come in and get the person out of there? The helicopter came in the morning, landed, looked around, took off, came back, landed, took off again, and that's it, folks. In 2 years, we've had 2 helicopters land and take off, not multitude. Go ahead.
So you don't do fixed wing there at all?
No, absolutely not. For multitude reasons, and mainly because I have 2 dogs that like the landing strip. We do not allow fixed wing. You can see if this picture was taken, Rick, what, a year ago? January. If you want to go down to the county, Rick's my director of operations. If you want to go down to the county, this was taken in January. Go back 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, and what you'll see is I have not built anything. We have not built any structures there that were not already there. The landing strip was already there. All we did was clean it up. I did build some berms. The berm is a big formation of dirt for the impact area for the bullets. And I'll address that in a minute. Everything around me, except for one neighbor, is Cleveland National Forest. Okay, it is basically Department of Forestry. Again, I'm not changing or hurting the environment. To the contrary, there was a, if you can see in the center of that picture, there's these 2 little square boxes there. Those are small arm ranges. Those are for handgun and for shotgun only. Now, I want to take you from, it looks like an E, okay? If you take the center of that E and go directly right, there's a clump of bushes. And you see those trees, just to the right of those trees is a rock. I got a topo map from the 1800s, and right there it said 5 Willows Spring. Okay, so I went over there, and it's all dirt, and there's 5 willow trees growing. I didn't know what kind of willow trees. They didn't look like anything I've seen, but they call them Mexican willow trees. And I said to my ranch hand who lives out there, let's dig this up. And he said, what do you mean? I said, there's supposed to be spring here. We dug it up. We dug it up, we took the dirt, and we pushed it into those berms you see right there. After we dug it up, my bulldozer got stuck because the spring came back to life. So we actually improved. We went back, and we now have a spring right there that comes up naturally. In the next picture, Rick. Okay. What do we do?
Can you back it up 1 slide, please? I have a question. In your airstrip, you've got an L. Looks like you have a double berm. Is
Yes.
that using that for a 1,000-yard range?
Yes, well, 850 yards. I call it 1,000, the reality is 850.
Okay.
He's talking about the dark area, the dark box on the left, that's actually a shadow. That's the landing strip, and that's the impact area for our long-range precision rifle courses that we teach.
And you're shooting 50 cal there?
We have shot 50 cal there, yes. Next one, Rick. Okay, this is what we do. We rent the ranges out primarily to different military and law enforcement agencies. Now, I know when the media got a hold of this, a lot of agencies said, oh no, we didn't know this, we knew nothing about this, including the Department of Land Use. We'll address that in a minute. They will come out, different military agencies will come out and they say, we need to use this long range, and we need to use this. They bring their own instructors, their own ammunition, their own firearms. What we supply for them if they need it is an EMT. I have 4 EMTs on staff. That's one of the requirements to make it safe out there. If they don't have their own, we'll supply it. When they want local training, if the local personnel want training from us, we'll provide the instructors, okay? It says home team units training and facility support and consultation. As an example, we deal with what's called special operations. That's primarily MARSOC, Marine Corps, SEAL teams, the Army Rangers, that kind of thing. And they do mission-specific training. And what mission-specific training means is they have a certain objective that they need to take care of. And so they'll call us up and they'll say, look, I need to get 4 guys trained up with this type of gun, and they're being deployed in 4 or 5 days. Can we go up there and shoot? And that's what we do. Now, in answer, why don't they go to Pendleton, why don't they go to Miramar? Those Rangers are so overworked right now, it's very difficult to get out there. Private ranges being rented out by the military is nothing new. This has been going on for years and years and years. There's a couple gun clubs here in town. The South Bay Rock Gun Club out in Vilsura, they're rented out quite a bit by the Coast Guard, the National Guard, because the ranges are at a premium, especially in California, land values are so high. Next.
Well, one other question, tracers. You allow tracers in your facility?
What he's talking about is incendiary rounds. The rounds look like they're burning. Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. Okay. What we don't do, allow civilians to rent the range. Okay. If you're a private gun club and you come to me and say, hey, we want to use your range, no. I've been in the civilian range business for 30 years, and I don't want a lot of civilians shooting where I live. Let's put it that way. Nothing against civilians. But we want to keep the training under hand. I don't want the civilian traffic going up that road, okay? So we do not let the range be rented out to civilians. Civilian security personnel, no. We do not train civilians that are being deployed to go overseas. End of story, that's it. A lot of rumors to that effect, I feel that I have been unjustly painted with a broad brush of Blackwater, and that's why I volunteered this opportunity to come out here. Engage in overseas security contracting? No, we do not engage in overseas security contracting. End of story. First person I hired out there has a certificate of environmental welfare from a local college. And he lives out there, he's a ranch hand. We have birds of prey that have stayed there as long as we've been shooting. We have, next one, Greg. We use no pesticides, no herbicides. I put up voluntarily habitat areas with the springs and the ponds. I think Ray saw them, and I think took pictures of them while we were out there. Rattlesnakes are relocated. Too bad we don't have the signs, but the sheriff's department asked me to put signs out there, bilingual signs about the dangers of rattlesnakes and all that. And we did that. And we actually relocate the rattlesnakes. I know it sounds terrible, but the rattlesnakes actually control a lot of the rodent population too. Yes, sir?
My understanding, when you relocate rattlesnakes, they die.
I don't believe that to be true because we have to relocate more and more every summer. But when I say relocate, we get them out of the heavy traveled area and maybe move them 50 to 60 yards to another area, not to another county or mountain preserve. Okay. This is one of the, we have a family of ducks living in the spring that we refurbished. They're there quite a bit. I have 2 Labradors that are honey dogs, and they don't even hunt the birds. They just kind of, everybody gets along together. Interesting thing about I have ponds, I have natural ponds out there. During the horse fire that was 6-7 months ago, those of you who remember that, interesting thing happened. The Department of Forestry came over in helicopters and sucked the water out of my ponds to fight the fire. Then they came back afterwards and said, we didn't even know you were here. What are you doing here? Again, Covert Canyon. I was told by somebody at the county if I would have called this place Happy Valley, I wouldn't be having these problems right now, but it is what it is. To maintain the current level, I'm pumping 1,500 gallons a day to keep that pond going out of my own well. Those of you who live in the backcountry are not going to like this, I get about 32 to 34 gallons an hour. Most people are getting 6, 7. I'm on top of a mountain. I have over 500 oak trees, and the axis is bowl, so I have plenty of water. Plenty of water. It's getting low right now because of the drought, but we still pump it. We got a lot of silt out of the area, and there was a lot of drainage that had not been cleared in probably 20 or 25 years. We took care of all that. The next one. This is during the horse fire, the helicopter that took the water out of one of my ponds. By the way, they said they'd bring the water back, but it hasn't happened yet. Next.
You want to keep going?
What's that?
Probably better go to questions.
Okay, let's back up to one and then we'll go to question. I'm sure somebody's now going to say, what about that?
Yeah, right.
You should say, what about that?
They should say, what
Yeah,
about
why
that?
not?
You're going to have to explain that really quick before.
You're going to ask me during Q&A and I'll be happy to answer that.
Okay, what about?
Okay, that's it in a nutshell of what we do. You should know that we have been operating there. We are approved, by the way, we are approved by the Department of Defense. We have a letter to show that. I have a copy of here if anyone wants to look at it. We are approved for small arms fire up to 50 caliber by the Department of Defense back in June of '06. So we were authorized by the federal government. One of the things that the county has said, the media has said, is that I was operating the airstrip illegally. I have my FAA license sitting right there to show it to you. What it gets down to, as far as I'm concerned, is a lot of misunderstanding. Yes, I should have gotten a major use permit, and I was negligent and didn't do that. We had been working with the county. We had applied for it. The county knew we were there before all these articles came out. You saw the articles where the county said we knew nothing about this. The code enforcement people went to the county people and said, we knew about this for months. We've been working with him to make sure this is done right. The 2 violations, they didn't even write me a violation, they wrote me 2 warnings. One of them was for having an unpermitted structure, which is about a 600 square foot barn, a metal building that was there before I bought the property. And we just found all the engineering documents and turned them over to our engineer to get it permitted now. The other violation was when we cleaned out that spring and moved the dirt, I graded without a grading permit. And so I said, write the violation. Well, they didn't write the violation because they felt it was so minor, and I think common sense kind of came up. They said, look, he hadn't plugged this spring and the water came back up, so how are we going to handle on that? That's where we're at. We've been operating since '06 without a problem. And I'm not going to slam anybody here, but the political issues with Blackwater came up. A lot of people were looking around, and my guess is your guess, and who threw our name into the mix, and all of a sudden we got all this attention and we got shot down. Now, the interesting part about being shot down is the county says I cannot train up there to the military law enforcement, but I can train up there privately, and I can invite you up there to shoot as long as I don't charge. There's no violation because I meet the county standards for a range as far as the safety goes. Every law enforcement agency who's been up there has basically said the same thing. Why the heck can't we use this facility? Why the heck can't we use this facility? Why do we have to drive it overtime? Why do we have to let OMs? There is a big need for this type of facility. Again, I don't take public funding. I don't take corporate funding. I fund it out of my pocket. I live there. It's my home. I'm not going to do anything to the environment or anything else that's going to cause a problem. Okay, any questions?
You know, you're located right next to the National Forest, is that what it was?
Yes.
Now, if you had a major use permit, would they have, what kind of say would they have with your permit as far as shooting rifles there?
No say. It's
You have
absolutely
no say, it's perfectly okay to do whatever you want?
absolutely legal. When it comes to national forests, you can actually hunt in the national forest what they call lawful pursuit of game. Now, in Southern California, San Diego County, they've shut down a lot of these areas, but having a range right next to BLM land or national forest has never been an issue, other than they ask you, how are you reclaiming your lead, and are you going to have lead over in the national forest issue?
If you were going to get a major use permit, you'd have to come up with several different plans, all right? You'd have to have a fire mitigation sort of thing.
A biologist, an archaeologist, You bet.
It'd be a lot of things, it would take a lot of time, right, to do something like that.
Yes.
What do you think, what would be your Achilles heel on your property? I mean, I know that's kind of a loaded question, but I would think you would have problems with, fire damage close to the national forest, so to speak.
No.
I mean, I didn't see any fire trucks out there.
No,
or
no.
anything like that.
There's no fire trucks on the land. We cleared the fire brush area that was required by Department of Forestry and Another County. The last time that area burned was in 1973. And the road was passable enough that they had fire trucks, Department of Forestry come up there. If you're asking me what my Achilles heel is, obviously I'm not going to sit here and say, you want to put me out of business, I'm going to try to do it.
I know, I'm sorry, that was a lot.
But I will tell you my Achilles heel is ignorance. And that is that people don't really understand until they come up there to look at it. And that's why I'm inviting you all up. People don't really understand. It's easy to sit there and say, oh, it's a mercenary thing and it's a gun. Not just education of firearms, but education of this environment. I have a contract with a recycling agent that recycles my lead on my indoor range. He also recycles a contract for our outdoor range. The berms you see, at the bottom of those berms, I designed myself, because I've been in this business a long time, is several layers of 40 millimeter vinyl sheeting that comes down to a peak. So that if we do get a torrential rain, any kind of lead runoff goes in that sheeting and goes into a cistern that we can clean it out. And keep in mind, when we talk about lead, the damage, lead is a mineable resource. It comes out of the ground, okay? We talk about things like these, what we call green ammunition. He alluded to this earlier. It comes under the other name of frangible ammunition. And that is one thing, when I say frangible, it's a composite of copper, a ceramic, and clay. And the good news about it is that when it hits a target, it'll fragment. It almost looks like a dirt clod hitting. And it goes into the ground, and it's not as toxic as lead. However, it does have certain toxicity to it. There are some states who are now green-only ammunition for training facilities. We looked at that. We know California's headed that way. We keep a supply of frangible ammunition. And by the way, the frangible ammunition is 3 times more expensive than the regular ammunition. So this is cost to me. Yes?
Yeah, I'm still a little confused about the Blackwater subcontract, and
right.
Yet you say the military came to you and said, we're not going to give you the contract because you don't have a history.
Right.
But yet, on the screen, we saw where you do military training. Or they come to you. So my question is, who does the oversight on these contracts? And why should Blackwater get to come in and use you as a subcontractor and make how much money off of a lobbyist through the Defense Department, and then you actually are doing the work? And so I'm just really suspicious of lobbyists and using our defense dollar effectively.
Of course, me too. The reason that we were subcontracted by Blackwater is because to operate this type of facility, anything to do with firearms in the state of California, we're regulated, first of all, by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which is federal, then the State Department of Justice out of Sacramento, and then also by your local, in this case, the Sheriff's Department in Alpine, and my local store, the San Diego Police Department. And you cannot come in from out of state, an out-of-state company, to get all these licenses. So when the Navy gave the contract to Blackwater, and Blackwater said, we can't do this because we're not licensed in California, they subcontracted it to us, okay? Now, the contract belongs to Blackwater, but they sub a portion out to us. In the last 5 years, what you're seeing now, that's the past performance we have acquired in the last 5 years. So now I'm actually getting contracts that have nothing to do with subcontract, they're ours only, because we're strategically placed. You need to understand that 60% of the naval forces operate off the West Coast. Okay, when I say off the West Coast, we're talking from Bremerton, Washington, to Hawaii, and up and down the California coast. That's one of the reasons facilities like this are basically needed. I think there's a happy medium though with one of these facilities, because that is to make it environmentally safe, so that we don't have an issue down the road, and also what I call make it community friendly, so that people don't have to worry about noise, like we talked about with not just the other competitors here, but also, on Highway 94 in San Diego, it's a police range that's been there since the 40s, I believe. We've probably driven down it a bunch of times. And the neighbors up above it complain, they complain, they complain. And the city keeps saying, where else can we go? These are some of the issues. It's urban sprawl, it's housing, it's all kinds of things. Any other questions? Yes?
Could you just clarify, so you were actually shut down at Covert,
Yes, I was.
now?
Yes.
And so this is making it difficult for you to fulfill some of your contracts?
Absolutely.
And what are you doing to, so that you can have those contracts?
What am I doing?
What are you doing about that? Are you going to try to reopen? Or are you?
Oh, obviously, yes.
Yeah, so you have to get a land use permit?
Yeah, we're in the process of these permits and all the environmental impact reports and everything else we have to do. We're doing it, and it takes a lot of money, takes a lot of time. Some of the contracts we have, we lost, okay? Other contract we're fulfilling at our indoor facility.
Now, when Blackwater builds its facility, obviously then it will have, instead of subcontracting, it will have to get its own permits that you mentioned?
Oh, absolutely.
The gun permits?
Absolutely. Yes.
So we'll have to go through that licensing procedure.
Yeah, that whole licensing thing, it's time consuming, it's expensive, but yeah, they're gonna have to go through and get all that. Anybody will, actually.
Wouldn't a more prudent business plan be, for example, you could get together with this gentleman over here and with Monfiglio and have all, have your facilities and your fundraising and your talents, which, are needed to train all these people, and get together with the government, who would be your biggest customer, really, and just set up in a base somewhere in California that's been closed down. And set it up in a facility like that and let the government say, we want you to plan this out. That way you're not building stuff, you're not putting this kind of operation next to interstates or next to national forests or next to places that people are going to be building houses, and it could be a defensible position. So, you could take care of the fire thing, and you could all get together and do this with your biggest customer. Wouldn't that be an interesting business plan compared to what's going on now?
You started your question, would it be prudent?
I mean,
perhaps
what would stop that from happening?
Well, if you're asking if Toyota, Chrysler, and Ford will all get together and share employees and share one location and produce vehicles, I don't think that's prudent or logical or realistic. Okay, I'm sure this gentleman's a nice guy, and we just met today. And I'm sure that on my 160 acres, I can take care of anything shooting. However, if I get a contract for a driving track, I'm going to call him up and say, hey, I need to use driving track. And he's either going to say yes or no. As simple as that. When I got a contract to work with the Army Rangers out of Fort Bragg, the nearest range I could find was Blackwater in North Carolina. So I did rent a range to complete that, but it had nothing to do with Blackwater. It was my contract. From a strictly a business point of view, I don't think it's a practical type of situation. But yes, I think that using a military base that is closed down or something like that would be prudent. The federal government doesn't cut loose their property very easily. It's just very difficult to do that. You had your hand up, and I'll get right to you.
Do you have any idea, or maybe when this private contracting of military training and all of the stuff that you guys are saying you're building these things for, when did all of this start and why?
It started about...
Because it seems to me that taxpayers are, as much as we don't like to pay taxes, we are used to paying taxes to fund our military and all of the bases, and now we know that military bases are being closed and now we're going into privatization.
Right.
So what happens is that we are now paying twice, basically, because we're paying taxes to the government, but then the government, we are now as taxpayers helping to fund private companies that we have no choice in as taxpayers selecting those private companies. So do you have any idea when this started
Yes.
and why?
Yes. It started shortly after the Civil War with militias and coming up and saying and going to people who manufactured firearms and manufactured gunpowder and manufactured lead ball and say the government can't do this, our military can't do this, can you do it? Now,
Well,
let
we
me,
know,
let me, let me finish the
we
question.
know the military doesn't build its, doesn't fabricate its own arms.
Understood,
So
but-
let's go beyond that. We're talking
Okay, then
about
let's go to 1972.
specifically
Let's go to 1972.
training. Right.
Let's go to 1972
Yeah, okay.
to a place in Prescott, Arizona called Gunsight Firearms Academy, or the American Pistol Institute, where the military used to go into Prescott, Arizona, and stay there and do a lot of training. I'm sure you've been there for your SEAL team training they used to contract. There's a place in Mississippi called Mid-South Institute. There's other places around the country that are not well known and would not have ever become well known had it not been for a lot of the exposure, this is my opinion, that the Blackwater organization brought to this industry. Okay, even prior to 9/11, I would get contacted by law enforcement agencies to say, we need an armors class, for example, somebody to teach us how to maintain our firearms. And they would come to our store and they'd say, can you provide an instructor? Can you provide this? Can you get that? And we would do it. Subcontracting for this type of activity is nothing really new. What's happening right now is that there is, some of the contractors have kind of forgotten what they're supposed to be doing, in my opinion. Not all of them, some of them. And I'm not specifically pointing out Blackwater or anybody else. I think that the ones that contract, speaking for our company, that say, yeah, you want to rent our range? Fine. You can rent our range. Bring your own instructors, bring your own meals, bring your own this, bring your own that. Another thing in our facility I should point out is that we don't have a cafeteria, nobody's spending the night there. We're not building lodges. As far as the groundwater goes, when we were up and operating, we had 4 porta potties brought out there, maintained every week, professionally subcontracted out. But yeah, this has been going on for a long time. Maybe not to this exposure level, but it has been going on for a long time.
Okay.
This gentleman has a question real quick, I think.
All right.
Is it,
One more. Let's okay, one more question.
is it possible that this Blackwater pipe thing just came along because the government has to go by the Geneva Convention, and by hiring contractors like that, the government's not liable for anything they might do?
Did you? First of all, I have absolutely zero personal military experience or background.
No, just a question.
I'm just telling you that the Geneva Convention has absolutely nothing to do with what these contractors do, what I do.
Exactly, that's my point.
It has nothing to do with
That's
that.
why we have.
Okay.
Okay, I wanted to try to move to the next phase. We gave Mark Halcon an extended period of time.
Apologize.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you very much. So probably what I'd like to do now is maybe invite Brandon to answer some more questions, and I can show that quick video of the site, kind of flesh out your presentation a little bit more. So let me do that real quick, and then after that, a few more questions. Why don't you come on up, take the microphone. If there's any questions for Brandon, these kind of general questions maybe he can answer as well, and then I'll get the video started.
Another a point that you brought up, Pam, was what's the military doing with their existing facilities? And one thing that I didn't mention is that we're actually providing subject matter experts and an engineering capacity to the military and local law enforcement agencies to actually go into their own facilities and help them with what they have and with their existing facility design, and helping them build facilities for the future so they can operate their operations on their existing land that they have right now. So that's an offer that we're providing to other local agencies as well.
Since you're not going to be able to hear it, I guess I'll narrate because it's you can watch this off of Google Video. This is Highway 98, which is, if you know, you go out over Interstate 8 and it forks. One part goes toward Mexicali, one part goes straight to Interstate 8. You drive for a ways and you'll find this Molitor Road, a dirt road with a few houses, which are typically, some of them are pretty nice, but most of them are usually a mobile home with maybe a patio or something built onto it. And that's the site they're talking about there, from what I understand.
Yep.
Pretty much. This is where they're looking at building this. And I was wondering, when you build a shooting range like this, it's pretty much, you don't have to be walking over the range that much, right? Because we're only bullets fly there, right? I guess you're not too smart to walk up there. But it's a far different kind of a site than the Potrero site by quite a bit.
Well, it might seem that way unless you happen to live out that way.
Well, no, I mean, it's desert, it's not mountain.
The effect of the grading is substantial, so if you go there, you'll see that everywhere else but where it was graded is beautiful desert, and the grading, so I actually disagree with you. I think that without intervention, it'll never come back.
I guess we would need.
We have some experts on that.
And that was Interstate 8 that you saw there. The thing I notice when I go out to the desert is that it's extremely quiet. It's extremely quiet. And you can hear that freeway from a long way off. You can hear any little car go by, but it's so darn quiet. There's a typical, I guess, kind of a nice little, not real nice, but reasonable place, I guess, probably winter home.
How far from SR 55 is that a long ways from there?
State Route 55. I don't even know. The S2 is the other thing that goes through. I don't know where.
You know where Oxio is? It's
Yeah.
a long ways off from there. No place to see.
No, it's not that far from.
It's miles.
Miles? Yeah, but it's not.
You know how far?
It's about 2 miles to Ocotillo and about 7 miles to Lazarus.
That's a little airstrip that they have. So they've got what they call an airport.
How close is the
It's right there next to the.
There's property next door.
There's the airport. And if you were able to turn your head, the other way, you would see their property.
Surface fire danger zones taking account, I mean, as we got laid out as far as airport and FAA and everything else?
Yes, it's all facing northeast.
The only person that uses the airport is the old crop duster that owns the property.
So you have no sound in this?
Well, I do, but it's not going to play too well in this room. So that's, I think, enough of the video. Go ahead with other questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Septic, sewer, how is, are you going to get rid of all that?
Phil, we take that as a subject sewer question.
We will build a sewer treatment plant.
So the sewer treatment plant, as well as the county, was very interested in whether we would support a water district in the No Mirage area, because you have a situation that's created is a few of the lots out there have grandfathered wells, and there's no regulation of the water draw or regulation of what's being taken out of the aquifer. So that would create a situation where they'd be able to provide a metric on the water usage on the aquifer, then we do support that. Yes, sir.
What do you think in the Blackwater application, they have set some parameters and some limits on, the size and the impact and all. Just your guess, being in kind of the business. What do you think the long run perspective is? I mean, the chances, my way of looking at this is their beginning plan, and they would try to double every 10 or 20 years.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, our plan there, we are maxed out. I mean,
Yeah.
There's nothing we can.
I'm asking
could
you
be
to
able to
comment
build
on
in
what
the
you
future.
know about
I couldn't.
Blackwater and what they might be doing.
Yeah, I really couldn't speculate. I mean, it would be pure speculation. And
Let me try to answer that because I'm representing Blackwater today. There's no question that they're planning to expand. Okay. They want
You're
to get,
planning to expand.
Yeah, we're planning to expand. No, he wouldn't say this. He would say that they're not planning to expand. But when I look at what their plan is, locating down by the border, and why? Why would they want this site right by the Tecate border crossing? Let's face it, you go and you talk to the Border Patrol, they are just scrambling for any place to stay. They have extra trailers. I mean, they're really having a hard time with, locating enough facilities. They're hit hard with this extra militarization of the border, the current philosophy of, closing the border off and not working with the other side, so to speak. But so that's what I look at and seeing that and they did leak out lately that they're looking at these border patrol contracts for militarization of the border, and they have now when they answer the question, it's that no, we're just going to do the same thing that these guys are doing. That we're going to do the training and so forth. But realistically, the proposals are quite a bit different given the type of companies that we're working with. These folks, Mark Halcon, Brendan, they're not, or Brandon, right? Yeah. They're not even conceiving of going into the security business and deploying people over in Iraq. Now, they might end up training some of those folks just inadvertently through some contracting. But basically, sure, we want our police to be trained on how to use their weapons. And I understand, I talked to the local Halcon police that I know, and that, yeah, they've used the Covert Canyon training facility for weapons training. So that's a problem that I see. I think that these companies want to grow. Unfortunately, they want to grow. Unless you're somebody like maybe Mark Halcon who says, well, I just live here and I just want to run my company the way it is. Probably you get a corporation with investors, and then you're corporate America. And if you're not, growing at a certain rate, then your stock market doesn't like you. So that's what's worrisome about this whole trend, is that we've got lots of training facilities going in. Okay, other questions, go ahead and ask whoever you want. We're in general discussion now, we're at questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question about like these camps, the internment camps that they're building, like especially in Texas, to detain any detractors and any people that will be the resistance against all that's happening. And they would be using the Blackwater and maybe try to contract with a company such as yours to, suppress all of us.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
It just seems like they would try to contract with all of these companies, all of these security type companies, to use these companies for the detainees. Well, there's a lot of people don't know about this, but in Texas, there's a lot of them along the border, in the border regions. They're making these detainees for like, yeah, Halbert.
And they're probably building their own training centers.
Yes, sir.
I think I asked before down in the desert, but what's to keep you day 2 again from selling to Blackwater?
Right.
Or day 3 or day 5 or whatever? What's to stop that from happening?
What's to stop that from happening is that we're committed to running a business, and
Until
it's
the money's
very,
right.
very, it's not in our plans.
Yeah, I understand until the money's right, then all of a sudden you have to be a fool not to take it.
And that the concern is valid because that's why we're committed, and I make the analogy to a car wash. So we're committed to putting in the language in our specific plan that would limit only certain type of activities on the facility. So it would exclude paramilitary training. So as a car wash, it doesn't matter.
Not if the government stepped in.
They would have to re-engage the whole planning process to change the zoning.
Change the
They're
Constitution.
politically controlled, so that's.
Well, I mean, one thing to consider, sir, is we're in, Congressman Filner's district, and this is Imperial County. So, it's just something to consider, that, that county is in control of some density.
I was told, is it true that you worked for Blackwater at one point?
No.
No.
No, absolutely not. And I'd be very, very interested in who told you that.
No, I have been told that. I don't remember that.
No. Yes, sir.
So how do you see yourself differing from Blackwater when you both train in firearms? You both train civilian, military, police agencies, fed agencies. You both train in driving, whatever kind of driving you want to call it, pursuit driving or evasive driving, right? You mentioned one of the main differences that you don't train security personnel. And that term, security, is, I think we wonder why do you say that? What is so bad about security personnel?
It's not security personnel, sir. The difference is they train mercenaries and we don't. And
Okay, that's the word I want to hear. So in other words, that's a synonym for mercenary in your view.
Yeah, and our facility is open to the public.
Okay,
now you can come shoot.
Yes,
They're part of our plan.
And now could I get your definition? We went through paramilitary. Can I get your definition of a mercenary?
So a mercenary is the definition of any individual that would engage in a act of support a country who's not a national or citizen of that country, would engage in activities to support that country's interests, mainly for profit, for monetary gain.
Or hire.
Yeah.
So what you say is a civilian under arms for hire.
That's not the definition I gave it. It's anyone that would be willing to, if you look up the exact definition, it specifically states that the individual is not in support, is not a citizen of the country, the national of that country, that participates to support them.
You understand the distinction I'm making?
Yeah, absolutely.
I said a civilian under arms for hire.
Yeah,
to my knowledge, we don't have any military mercenaries.
That's an interpretation. Absolutely.
Okay, I think we're kind of reaching the end of when I wanted the meeting to end. We can either continue, should we have it, I'll tell you what I think might be useful. Is there any other further questions for these people from their companies? And then maybe we'll have a discussion amongst non-company people and find out. Or should we just continue talking? What would you guys think? Private.
My wife wants me home, by the way. She's got 3 little ones.
I'll tell you what I'd like to do is to invite the people that we've invited here, give them a last round of applause. And we'll invite them to go outside or leave. Thank you very much. And thank you.
First of all, my name is Mike Lumpkin. For those who don't know me, I have spent about 2 decades as a Navy SEAL. Retired this summer. Finished up in Washington, D.C. at the liaison to the U.S. Congress. Retired guy now, so I'm just kind of like watching this from the cheap seats now and seeing how it unfolds. A couple things I'll throw out to you. You've got 3 companies here. There's a lot more of them. This has been going on for years. He mentioned the gentleman from Covert Canyon about the Mississippi Institute of Self-Defense shooting. When I first came in the SEAL teams in 1986, that's where we did our training. We used private facilities. What's happened since 9/11 and this surge in ongoing combat operations that have been going on for longer than World War II now, is that it's very much straining the military. We'll take the average SEAL team, for example. The average SEAL is spending 14 out of 18 months away from home every year. And of that, only 6 months is overseas. The rest of it is training here in the United States. Unfortunately, there are no ranges here in San Diego to speak of where a guy can go home at night. The closest thing that they have, let's say for a 1,000-yard range, is out in Niland, California, which is 3.5 hours away. So that's really not a day trip where you're going to go get home at night. And what's happening is that we as taxpayers are paying re-enlistment bonuses to our guys in excess of $150,000 to stay in. And that is because the strain on the family is so significant. But what's happened is the Department of Defense has put what they call dwell time and I tempo, which is an individual operational tempo of our guys. What happens is they're mandating how much time they can spend away from home in between their combat deployments. So what they're saying is they have to spend most of their time at home. So what unit commanders are forced to do is to make the decision. Okay, do I break the rule and make sure my guys are ready for combat, or do I not prepare them adequately for combat? And that is what our unit commanders are forced to do. Between 2001 and 2003, I was in charge of training all the West Coast SEAL teams that before when they went into Iraq and Afghanistan. And that was one of the biggest challenges we had. Is to, you've got 10 pounds of stuff in training you want to put into a 5-pound bag. I think what we're going to do is we're going to see more and more of these type of facilities. Everybody who's got 650 acres and sees an opportunity is going to take advantage of this emerging market, because right now it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. And San Diego is an absolutely unique situation because it is a fleet concentration area. The Navy is going to more expeditionary operations. They've created what they call the Navy Expeditionary Component Command, and they're now got Navy guys in Iraq doing stuff. So to share the burden with the Army and the Air Force. Doesn't make it right, just the way it is. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands this is there's a long history of this, and it's only going to get worse or more of them in the future, especially in the San Diego area. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can't understand how they can take a private individual and train him and go through all that and put him over there for the prices we hear about, and if we can't do it in our own military. I don't understand it.
Well, for example, I was offered, there's company Blackwater, Triple Canopy, there's a ton of different companies. I could have left the military and gone to work for them for $1,500 a day.
That's what my point is.
Okay, because they have no overhead. The military's already trained me. I have 20 plus years as a Navy SEAL. So I walk into it with that experience. What the Department of Defense has to do is when you take or the sheriff or anybody else, they have to do that training.
No, I know.
So they're able to leverage the capital investment.
But we keep hearing over and over that they're paying mercenaries, Blackwater or whatever, like $150 grand a year. Well, I can't believe we can't put military people in there for less than that.
Well, the problem is because of the dwell time and the I-tempo issues, the military, there's no more to give. I can tell you right now, when the average SEAL is spending I know that set very well, spends 14 out of every 18 months away from home. You're going to shorten that up if you put more guys at that. The military is, for what we're doing in this sustained operations, is very much taxed. I would call it fragile on the verge of breaking.
Why don't they have more military? I mean, I don't get it.
And the reason why I think is because they don't, first of all, they don't have the throughput mechanisms to train them, and boot camps and things like that. If they did, you're going to have to grow the force to build those, and then you have the entitlements and the long-term costs at the end. I mean, I get a military pension, okay, and I won't lie to you, it's pretty darn good. I ain't complaining about it. And the taxpayers are going to have to pay that pension on me until the day I die. And it's probably going to be more than my salary the entire time I was in with life expectancy projections. So paying a military retirement isn't always a financial bargain for the taxpayers. So, I mean, that has to be weighed. I'm not agreeing with the policy.
Well,
I absolutely am opposed to anything, I think, using...
obviously, you spent a few years in the military.
I did.
Okay, so you have a retirement.
I did.
Most guys that are going to go for 4 years don't really have a retirement.
Yeah.
So how can it not be cheaper to send our military trained military over there versus hiring these kind of?
Because what will happen, military manpower it's a mess. It's not well organized. The military is a big bureaucracy, and it's very inefficient.
Yeah, a lot like government.
Well, it is government. So, I mean, I would love to see those paramilitary organizations go away. I personally don't feel that there's a place for them. It doesn't change the fact that they exist here today. So we got to make sure we're talking apples and oranges here. You can address the one issue, but what we're dealing with here right now are land use issues and what facility is going to go where,
Well,
right?
what for land issues? My God, anybody ever travel through Camp Pendleton?
Yeah.
Well, this is the point. I mean, here as taxpayers in our society, we have to understand where we're at in terms of the allocation of resources that we as taxpayers, the burden that we're placed under. Basically, our defense budget on an annual basis exceeds that of the rest of the industrial world combined.
And you had military construction, you had everything
our
else,
foreign policy,
$50 billion.
Our foreign, yeah, and that's really that's the on the budget part of the entire pot.
I call it a trillion.
Right.
It's rounded. Yeah.
And so when we have this, basically, right now we're in an undeclared war on a concept, the war on terror, which in itself raises a whole can of worms legally and morally. And in terms of what we're paying as taxpayers, that I think it's oxymoronic to have this I consider these operations there is perhaps some fringe usage for them, but what we're paying out as a society and denying ourselves, our bridges are falling apart. Our Social Security is going broke.
I agree with absolutely with everything you said.
Why can't we? It just kills me to see us not allocating these resources in existing facilities, and that's that seeing this as a burgeoning industry is scary, because as a citizen, that I don't like the idea of Halliburton setting up facilities that could be flipped into civilian detainee camps, and that's exactly where this is headed.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. The point I'm trying to make is that San Diego, we have a unique situation here. We have the benefit of having the military here, which is a huge economic benefit for us. I mean, if you look at the San Diego County, what they estimate the Department of Defense brings to this economy, it's mind-boggling the amount of money it brings. What we as residents have to do is we have a burden here as well. Our burden to have that benefit is we have to make sure our guys are trained. We have to figure out the best way to do it. I would like to see a world where these organizations, don't exist, but that's not a reality because of what we've got here. Is even when the war on terror is done, I mean, the Navy Expeditionary Component Command was created from the Navy and stationed right here in San Diego. There's two parts of it. So now you've got this almost 60,000 person element, half of which is here, 30,000 guys who have to train to go to war in the Navy that wasn't here 3 years ago. So, but there are no facilities to train them. They don't exist. The benefit we have with a commercial enterprise, and there is one that I can think of, is that it's regulated. Federal government, we don't regulate our ranges. We go in there and we shoot it up. We don't worry about the lead. We don't turn it back over. We don't have to pay the lead abatement issues. We don't have to deal with the environmentals. We don't have to do any of that. That's why we don't turn over bases lightly, because it costs us billions of dollars to make them useful again for the public. Here, the one benefit is that you're going to have is these will be heavily regulated. And there'll be oversight with them. Does that mean I agree with the concept? No. But it's going to happen. It's going to keep happening in one capacity. It may not be in any of these 3 sites, and it may be in Fallbrook next time. It may be in Nyland. It may be it's just a reality.
It'll probably be on all 3 sites when you get 12 people. Nobody knows about it.
I don't really think they're that well regulated because there's no licensing that I can find. In other words, if somebody down the street wants to braid hair, they have to get a cosmetology license.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a license to run a shooting range. You just go through the county, and once you get it through the county process, then whatever happens in that black box, who knows? I hope they're training on AK-47s, because would they lose 200,000 of them over
Yeah.
in Iraq?
Yeah.
I mean, they say we're
Our
not going to
buddy
train.
that's gonna give us the September report was the guy that lost them.
What they say over here is, Blackwater says we're not going to train with AK-47s. You know, that's kind of a mistake, if you ask me. They better be training
You know,
with
we used to
AK-47s.
prefer them.
Yeah, because you've got if you're over in Iraq, you probably find them everywhere.
Which is amazing. When I was in Iraq, what we were doing is we were taking the AK-47s, we'd have to turn those in, and we were handing brand new ones at taxpayers' cost to the police. So here we have these ones we confiscated from the bad guys, and we destroy those, and we take brand new ones and give them. It was just mind-boggling.
Because it's still about the money.
It's about bureaucracy and efficiencies. Yes, sir.
I'm a former Marine officer, and I got trained in Camp Pendleton,
Yep.
and they brought in outside experts, you know, and they're from Israel and from Australia and from England, and they showed us all about kicking indoors and doing whatever. And we were well trained. I need to deploy us off to Vietnam, and the Marine Corps is much larger than it is today, and the Army was much larger. But the base is still there, and the facilities are still there, and they ran us through all this training, you know, and we were well trained, you know, no doubt about it. For what we were doing, we were well trained. I have trouble thinking, well, if we need this training so bad, and there isn't any place for it, why can't they simply put, you know, 1,000 acres at Camp Pendleton and put it in a facility like this and bring in outside people just like this Mark Halcon, who's, you know, exquisitely trained in these arts, and let them rip, you know, and it would be so much cheaper than sending these people out. They must be paying them an incredible amount of money if they can go buy facilities like this.
And that would
do it. There's something doesn't fit in the whole scenario. And your recent military background, maybe you have some insight into that. I don't get it.
Well, frequently we have in the DoD, which is so large, is you have the right hand not talking to the left hand. I mean, it is routine. Everybody, I mean, there's not one Department of Defense. There's like 50 of them. You've got the Army, you've got the Navy, and within the Navy, you've got the SEAL teams, you've got the aviation community, you've got the surface ships, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. Each one gets its own budget. They do their military construction through different mechanisms. As a SEAL, mine didn't go through the Navy. Mine went through U.S. Special Operations Command at Tampa. And Navy had nothing to do with anything the SEAL teams do when it comes to budgetary issues. So frequently there was disconnects. And that is one of the challenges. And there's the warfare and the concept of war is not efficient at all. There's no efficiencies in it at all. I think that there might be some merit to what you're talking about as far as doing Camp Pendleton. Unfortunately, it would exclude all those law enforcement people that still also have a requirement for a facility to train them.
Why would
it?
Well, what happens is that there's always a pecking order. When you have, we paid, I think we paid $7.5 million, I could be wrong in the numbers, to build a long 1,000-yard range at Camp Pendleton, we being U.S. Special Operations Command for the SEAL teams. We can't ever get on the range. We always get bumped from it because there's somebody, a Marine, they schedule the ranges, even ours, and we can't get there. And there's a pecking order on who gets what range when. And because they're all in one area, when they're shooting on this range, you can't use this range over here. So the pecking order would be law enforcement historically is always last because they're not trained to go to war.
What he was saying, what I heard him say, was take so many acres for
Conceptually?
Private, you know, like the cops and the...
So you're saying the federal government should lease the land out to a...
That portion of Camp Pendleton.
That's
You know, not the Marines. They have a section where the Marines don't even go.
Have you been all over Camp